Honorable members, prayers. Almighty God, we humbly beseech thee to look with favor upon this Parliament of the Republic of Ghana. Grant that it may perform its high duty as in thy sight. Give divine guidance to the President of the Republic, and thou members of Parliament and ministers of state with discernment and vision, integrity and courage, that through the labors of government, this land and people may be well and truly served, and thy good purposes for the common human life be realized in our midst. Amen. O God, grant us a vision of our country, fair as it might be, a country of righteousness, where none shall wrong his neighbor, a country of plenty, where evil and poverty shall be done away with, a country of brotherhood, where all success shall be founded on service, and honor shall be given to the deserving, a country of peace, where government shall rest on the will of the people and the love for the common good. Bless the efforts of those who struggle to make this vision a living reality. Inspire and strengthen our people, that they may give time, thought, and sacrifice to speed the day of the coming beauty of Ghana and Africa. Amen. Honorable members, item 2, formal communication from the President. I have in my hand a formal communication from His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Ghana. It reads as follows. 21st January 2021, Mr. Speaker, I hope this finds you well and in good spirits. In accordance with Article 78(1) of the Constitution of the Republic, I am submitting through you to Parliament for its prior approval the names of the persons I intend to appoint as ministers in my new government. The names and designations of the nominees are set out below. Central Government, Ministry and 1. National Security, Albert Kandapa. 2. Finance, Ken Ofori Atta. 3. Trade and Industry, Alan Chiremanteng. 4. Defense, Honorable Dominic Nitiwo, MP. 5. Interior, Honorable Ambrose Dere, MP. 6. Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, Shirley Ayoko Bochi. 7. Attorney General and Minister for Justice, Godfred Dami. 8. local government, decentralization, and rural development, Honorable Dan Boche, MP. 9, Parliamentary Affairs, Honorable Oseche Mensah Bonsu, MP. 10, Communications and Digitization, Honorable Osla Owusu Ekefo, MP. 11, Food and Agriculture, Dr. Owusu Afriye Akoto. 12, Energy, Honorable Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh, MP. 13, Education, Honorable Dr. Yao Osei Adichum, MP. 14, Health, Honorable Kweku Ajimamenu, MP. 15, Lands and Natural Resources, Honorable Samuel Abdullah Jinako, MP. 16, Roads and Highways, Honorable Kwasi Amwakwata, MP. 17, Works and Housing, Honorable Francis Asensu Boache, MP. 18, Transport, Kweku Ofori Esiama. 19, Fisheries and Aquaculture Development, Honorable Mavis Hawa Kumsin, MP. 20, Railway Development, Honorable John Peter Ameu, MP. 21, Sanitation and Water Resources, Cecilia Abina Dapa. 22, Tourism, Arts and Culture, Awal Mohammed. 23, Gender, Children and Social Protection, Honorable Sarah Adjos Safo, MP. 24, Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs, Honorable Ebenezer Kojokum, MP. 25, Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation, Honorable Dr. Kweku Afriye, MP. 26, Employment and Labor Relations, Honorable Ignatius Bafwa Iwa, MP. 27, Information, Honorable Kojo Opon Nkrumah, MP. 28, Youth and Sports, Honorable Mustafa Yusuf, MP. 29, Public Enterprises, Honorable Joseph Kujo, MP. 30, Works and Housing, as Minister of State, Honorable Frida Prempeh, MP. Regional Government, 1, Ahafo, George Boache. 2, Ashanti, Simon Osei Mensah. 3, Bono, Justina Owusu Banahene. 4, Bono East, Edu Jan. 5, Central, Justina Marigold Asan. 6, Easton, Seth Achampong. 7, Greater Accra, Honorable Henry Korti, MP. 8, Northern, Shani Alasan Shaibu. 9, Northeast, Yidana Zakaria. 10, Oti, Joseph Makubu. 11, Savannah, Said Muhazu Jibril. 12, Upper East, Stephen Yakubu. 13, Upper West, Dr. Hafiz bin Saleh. 14, Volta, Dr. Archibald Yao Lecha. 15, Western, Honorable Kobina Ochridaku Mensa, MP. And 16, Richard Obing for Western North. I would be grateful if Parliament would expedite the process of prior approval of my nominees so they can take up their positions in government forthwith and assist me to deliver on my mandate for my second term. Accept, Mr. Speaker, the assurances consideration. Warm regards, Nana Adodankwa Akufo-Addo, President of the Republic. Honorable members, the nominations are accordingly referred to the Appointments Committee for consideration and report. We now move to item 3, correction of votes and proceedings and official report. Honorable members, we still don't have any copy of the official report. So we will continue to be correcting the votes and proceedings. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Put it off. That's why I keep it there. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Page 7. Page 8. Yes, honorable member.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, indeed, I was in the House yesterday, and I indeed signed the attendance register. But my name appears on page 8 as having been absent.
Kindly draw our attention to the number.
Mr. Speaker, that will be page 8, number 12. My name appears as having been absent.
Table office to take note.
Thank you.
Page 9. Page 10. Page 11. Page 12. Honorable members, the votes and proceedings of the fifth sitting of the first meeting of the first session held on Thursday, 21st January 2021, as corrected, are adopted as a true record of proceedings. We now move to item 4, business statement for the fourth week. Chairman, Business Committee, please present the business report.
Right Honourable Speaker, the Business Committee met yesterday, Thursday, the 21st of January 2021, and arranged business of the House for the third week ending Friday, the 29th of January 2021. The Speaker of the Committee accordingly submits his report as follows. Right Honourable Speaker, you may read any available communication through the House, and you may admit statements to be made in the House in accordance with Order 72. The Speaker, papers may be late during the week, and reports from committees may also be presented to the House. The Committee of Selection is urged to expedite work on the composition of the various committees of Speaker, I take that again. The House into the succeeding week would have to consider the draft review standing orders. And if we do, arising out of the approval that may be given, the committee selection will be required to constitute the committees as early as possible after the House approves of the new standing orders. The Speaker, motions may be debated and there are consequential resolutions, if any, taken during the week. The Speaker, as I said, in view of the urgent need for the review of the standing orders for the smooth conduct of business in the House, a joint caucus is programmed to be held on Thursday, the 28th and 29th of January 2021. The meeting is to avail all honourable members the platform to discuss the new orders and amendments that may be proposed by members. Honourable members accordingly are urged to attend the Joint Caucus meetings programmed for Thursday the 28th and Friday the 29th of January in order to make their proposal for consideration. The Speaker, the House had determined to have an induction seminar for members of the House this very weekend. It has become necessary to reschedule the induction seminar and it will take place during the first week of February, the first weekend of February 2021, which then will mean 2 weeks away from this very weekend. Further details on the induction seminar will be communicated to honorable members in the next business statement. Right Honorable Speaker, the remains of the former President of the Republic of Ghana, Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings, is expected to be laid in state for filing passed from Speaker, the filing pass program for members of Parliament is slated for Tuesday, the 26th of January 2021. It is proposed that members of Parliament pay their respects between the hours of 9 and in the phone on a set date to enable the House sit at 11 o'clock in the forenoon thereafter. Speaker, in accordance with Standing Order 160 sub 2 and subject to Standing Order 53, the Business Committee submits to this Honourable House the order in which the business of the House shall be taken during the week. Speaker, the draft agenda is before us, and I don't intend to go through item by item for the stated date. Speaker, accordingly, I will implore the Hansard Department to deem this as having been read and capture same into the Hansard. I beg to submit, Mr. Speaker.
Any comments from honorable members? Yes.
Right Honourable Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, item number 3 on the business statement, review of the standing orders. The committee has programmed a joint caucus meeting to be held on Thursday, 28th and 29th of January. But I am aware that yesterday a technical committee was put in place, and Mr. Speaker tasked them to present their report on Wednesday. So I'm expecting the joint caucus meeting will happen before the committee presents its report, so that we can make our input, which they will incorporate it in their report, so that they will present the report to the House. But in this case, they will present their report on Wednesday, and on Thursday and Friday, and then make an input. Meanwhile, they've already submitted their report to the House. That's my concern. So which one should come first? Thank you very much.
Yes, Honorable.
Most grateful, Right Honourable Speaker. Right Honourable Speaker, please, I would want to draw attention to a few typos. Item number 5, His Excellency President Jerry John Rawlings. There should be an S. As former president, we cannot afford to capture his name wrongly. And Right Honourable, the item numbered CII, the Committee of Selection is urged to expedite. There is an omission there, and it's important that we draw attention to these matters. Having said that, Right Honourable Speaker, I want to see clarity from the leader of the majority group as regards item numbered CII and item number 3, review of the standing orders. I was under the understanding that the committee compositions will tarry a while until the new standing orders come into force, and then we will have the committees composed in line with the new standing orders. But one gets to read CII. You are urging the committee of selection, which is chaired by the Speaker, to expedite work on the composition of the various committees of the House and submit its reports on same to the House as soon as possible. So I'm not clear, are we proceeding with the old committees under the current standing orders, or are we going to hold on, tarry a bit, and let the technical committee we set up yesterday conclude its work in earnest, so that the committees would then be established along the provisions of the new standing orders? So there's a need for some clarity, because even from this, you don't, between CII and then item numbered 3, it's not very clear exactly what we are doing. Are we waiting for the new standing orders before we set up the committees, or are we going to proceed, set up committees along the existing standing orders? It's not clear. So if we can have some clarity. And the filing passed also, item numbered 5. Will His Excellency the former President be laid in state from Monday, or is it Sunday? The statement which we have is indicating Sunday. I thought that what I read in the press was Monday. So if we can have some clarity on that as well. I'm grateful, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Suhini.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. I rise to seek your guidance and possibly the guidance of the leader of the majority group in relation to an urgent matter of public interest, which relates to the recent discovery by the officials of the Ghana Health Service, together with the National Security and the Yoko, I think. That has to do with a baby selling syndicate in the country. Mr. Speaker, I do acknowledge that as we speak, representatives of the President at the various ministries, but I seek guidance if it will be possible for the House to get some sort of a briefing from the ministers responsible for, the representatives of the President at these ministries that perhaps work with the agencies that were involved in this baby syndicate selling in the country that has been around for a very long time now. Mr. Speaker, I speak as someone who has followed this syndicate for some time now in my past life as a broadcaster. In 2014, when a similar incident happened in Kumasi at the Komfo-Anokye Teaching Hospital, resulting in the supposedly loss of Madam Suebe's baby, it became a national concern, and assurances were given that reforms will be put in place to ensure that the syndicates did not continue to practice. I will seek your guidance, Mr. Speaker, and see if it is possible for the House to be briefed on the steps that have been taken so far to assure all that the systems will be improved and the people who are behind this, people I consider very wicked, will be dealt with, and our system will be improved. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Bejra.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. Right Honorable Speaker, I seek to find out from the leader of government business why the e-parliament solution that we have all worked on in the previous parliament, which will aid all of us in the discharge of our duty. I've noticed that colleagues have been given their tablet, and most of them are new. We have close to our 40% new. And on these early days, can't we find space, especially next week, to take them through the e-parliament solution and the usage of the tablet, so that with the COVID situation, some of us can be in our offices and also participate in deliberation in the chamber. Mr. Speaker, I was expecting the business committee to find space within next week so that we can go through that e-parliament solution system in the House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My suggestion.
Honorable Member for Bole.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to raise an issue that has to do with public interest relating to COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, I hold in my hand a laboratory report from Nunguchi in the name of one Achampo Kofi. This report came with an audio where he went to Nunguchi for a test, and it turned out that it was positive. An hour later, he was called, and that positive could be changed to negative if he's able to pay an amount of 500 cedis. He went back, paid the 500, and the results was changed from positive to negative to enable him to travel out of this country. Mr. Speaker, when he got to his destination, he decided to go for a test, and according to the audio, it turned out to be negative. I think this is a very, very important issue. We are encouraged to go and do, and if the institutions that are supposed to undertake this test, the credibility of these institutions are put to question, then where are we? So, Mr. Speaker, I'm inviting you to talk to leadership so that we can get those who are responsible for the Ministry of Health to come and update us on this matter. I have just gone to do my test 2 days ago. The results is in. Oh no, it's here. It's negative. But we need to. So I'm saying that leadership should invite whosoever is responsible to come and update. We don't throw the credibility of this very important institution to a question. Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Member for Dafiama.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. I also looking at the business statement and realizing the state of COVID-19 that we are in. In fact, we do not really understand what is happening currently. And I think that if we can find a space to get the necessary body or whoever that is in charge, even though there's no minister for health, we can't be waiting till that minister is appointed. Somebody should properly brief this House on the state of COVID-19 and where we are and what we need to do in this country. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Minority Leader.
Speaker, just two on the report as submitted by the Leader of Government Business on the business for the coming week. Speaker, the Honorable Ablako have raised a very important matter, subsequently supported by the Honorable Alasan Sohili. The Appointments Committee has been constituted in accordance with Order 172 of our standing orders. Understandably, we will have to reconstitute committees of Parliament subsequent to the adoption of the new standing orders. But as it is, Mr. Speaker, act with urgency. As ranking member, I probably even will wish that the committee, if the vice chair is available, meet today to agree on an official publication to solicit public memoranda on the present recycled nominees. So, Mr. Speaker, we need to know today. We have to meet. We cannot wait for the revision of the standing orders. That was the understanding. We have to meet today, agree. And as mentioned by the Honorable Member for the FEMA, for instance, we have to prioritize some of the ministers in terms of, we have a list, a long list, but we have to prioritize so that some can be functional, like Minister for Finance, Health, National Security, and others. So, Leader, give us clarity. As we meet, we would want to proceed so that the Appointments Committee meets to reach out to the public to share information. Mr. Speaker, the other is to respond to the Honorable Bejra about e-Parliament and to assure him that, Mr. Speaker, the Parliamentary Service Board, which was ably chaired by Kwe and your good self in attendance, we were about taking major decisions on improving bandwidth and internet presence within the presence of Parliament. And therefore, we are at work. It's just that the board, it was one of the last decisions it had to take, so it deferred to a new board. So when a new board is constituted, all the matters relating to e-Parliament and to improve, use ICT to improve Hansard and others will be done and done properly. So, Mr. Speaker, we will need that clarity from the Leader of Government Business. And to add on, Mr. Speaker, the laying in state of the remains of former President Jerry John Rawlings, late, will be Monday 25th and Tuesday. But emphasis is that for Parliament and for members of Parliament, it will be on 26th. That is the understanding that I had. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Majority Leader, some issues have been raised. Take your time to respond to them.
Mr. Speaker, first, the clarity sought by the Honorable Echampo. The Joint Caucus own considerations will be predicated on the report from the technical committee. The reason why we suggested to ourselves yesterday that beginning yesterday, if anybody has any considerations, it should submit same to the technical committee. We then will meet on Wednesday to factor the relevant proposals into the draft. And then, when we are agreed on Thursday and Friday, perhaps continue into the ensuing week, we run ourselves through the nodal issues contained in the orders. So that is the explanation for it. The Honorable Okujeto raised issues about what we could attribute to the printer's devil, the spelling of the name of the former President Rawlings. I think in line 2 of 5 is properly captured. So I guess you can do the reconciliation yourself. You don't need any reconciliation commission to do this for us. The Speaker, the point he raised about Roman number 2 and the C, you remember that deliberately I did not read what is contained there because really some misstatement of the fact which has been reiterated by my colleague, the minority leader. What we have indicated to ourselves is that we want to hold on, do the approval of the new orders, and then constitute the committees immediately. We don't want to run ourselves into any challenges. For instance, if we decide to constitute committees now, the ones under the new orders, the numbers are down. You consider committees now, you get to that level. What do you take out? And, you run ourselves into some turbulence. So we've decided to hold on for the time being and allow for us to, as early as possible, approve of the new orders. And then we'll be able to put the committees together. It's the reason we read what is captured there. And I spoke to the truth, not appropriately captured here. Again, item number 5. You would also remember that I didn't read what is captured here because it's not correctly captured. And that is why I mentioned the relevant date as far as it applies to members of parliament to us, that we are supposed to file past on Tuesday, the 26th of January 2021 at 9 o'clock, and then between the hours of 9 and 10, in order for us to be able to sit at 11. The Honorable Suhini was seeking some guidance from you and not from me. So you provide him with the guidance. The Honorable Bejra, I think the issue that he raised has largely been respected. Suffice it to say that when we have the members will be run through how it's going to be operational in the House. That aspect is left to the induction that we shall have. The Speaker, the Honourable Member for Bole raised the issue about whatever discovery that chance upon relating to Noguchi Institute. I don't know how it finds space in the business statement that we have read. It's a major thing. It's a major thing that the appropriate persons could respond. There's no place in the business statement that we read here. The Speaker, the minority that raised issues about the recycling of ministers. I don't want to comment on that. It's baiting me to comment. The Speaker, you are aware that in 1997, it was a complete rehash of the ministers who served in the first parliament. And then the concept of holdover ministers then arose, that all of them were going to be tipped off into the new parliament, that is the second parliament. And that generated this J.H. Mensah versus the Republic issue when the case went to court and the court determined that the term of those ministers had come to an end with the termination of the tenure of the president. So, Mr. Speaker, if we are talking about recycling, there's a better example for him to cite.
I thought after the responses from the chairman of the business committee, the majority leader, it will end it, but I can see 3 members on their feet. Honorable Ahmed Ibrahim.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, did I hear the leader of government business saying that the appointment committee will have to hold on pending the revision of the standing orders and the reformation of the new committees before the vetting of the ministers will go on? If so, Mr. Speaker, what or the rule that will guide us in doing that? Because our standing orders, Order 172, it says there shall be an appointment committee. Mr. Speaker, and there is an appointment committee. Mr. Speaker, government communication has come. A referral has been made to the appointment committee, and therefore the whole House is waiting for that committee to bring the report of the committee in the form of recommendations for this House to approve. Mr. Speaker, looking at the time that we are, like the honorable minority leader, that committee will have to reprioritize even the nominations that you have just communicated to us, so that a finance minister will be approved to go and prepare a budget, because the vote on account that was approved by this House was for only 3 months or so. So if we are waiting for this House to approve of the new standing orders for the recomposition of the committees, including the new appointment committee, before we go ahead and approve or vet the ministers, it will prolong the time, and government will not have the time to wait for us. And Mr. Speaker, to conclude, not long ago, just last week Friday, the majority held the committee that we in minority were planning to obstruct government business. Now we say let's facilitate government business expeditiously, and you are rather putting chalk by saying that we should wait. Waiting for where? Mr. Speaker, we are ready to vet the ministers. There's an appointment committee made up of 26 members. So we should not be told that we should wait. We are ready. Let the committee wait. Mr. Speaker, I had the privilege in sitting in the committee on selection. What you agreed upon was that we must approve the appointment committee so that it will prepare the ministers for vetting, and that there must be a small committee to go and be working on the standing orders. All these have been done. But now, if there's a referral, if that is what he said, then there's no need for even, Mr. Speaker, for you to refer these nominations to the appointment committee, if there's no appointment committee. Mr. Speaker, I think we must support government business to go on. We must help the nation to work. Leader, we are ready. So let the appointment committee start preparing the ministers for vetting, so that sooner, even if you want to agree the time, we are ready to help you. So let us not say in such a way that we should wait. What if we are not able to agree on the new standing orders? Then what will happen? Lastly, Mr. Speaker, per our standing orders, they say Parliament shall sit ordinarily at 10 o'clock and again at 2 o'clock. Mr. Speaker, as a deputy whip, my intelligence gathered from the back, he said that members are not comfortable with the 2 o'clock sitting. Mr. Speaker, no members alone. Even the media, our friends from the media themselves are facing difficult challenges in filing their stories and those things. So, Mr. Speaker, that is the intelligence I've gathered. And once the members are speaking and we the whips, we've heard it. Some cited security reasons, because when we close at 6 or 7, moving from here to their various houses. And I was hurt when one member told me that, oh, you are a leader, when you are going at 7 o'clock, you have a police. I felt somehow. So, Mr. Speaker, if Once there are no new standing orders, if members are saying they are not comfortable with the 2 o'clock, if we can go by the standing orders and go by the Parliament sitting at 10 o'clock and adjourning at 2 o'clock, and we make sure that we follow that time religiously. So that, Mr. Speaker, who even have to go and do government business, when they can at 10 and we adjourn at 2, so they can go back to their work, then the other members can go to the FM stations and be doing other things that we have to do. So, Mr. Speaker, with these few words, though not part of the business committee, I know your good self will take it religiously, and let's go by our standing order. Sit at 10 and adjourn at 2. So this is what I have to submit. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity.
Yes, Honorable Suhili.
Thank you very much, Right Honorable Speaker. Even though that's not the reason why I stood, to associate entirely with the submission that has been made by Honorable Ahmed, Member of Parliament for Banda, especially in relation to the Appointments Committee. We think that it is important that our government is seen to be in a hurry to meet the needs of the people who are very expectant. And it is important that we begin work, given the fact that the President has already announced the various nominees. It is important that we begin work as soon as possible. And it is related to the question that I asked earlier, Mr. Speaker, and I was explicit when I requested your guidance and also the guidance of the leader of government business, because there is still a government in place, even though there are only representatives of the President at the various ministries. I could, suggest that the Ghana, or say even the director of the IOCO should be brought to the House. But I wanted to leave that for the direction of either Mr. Speaker or the leader of government business. And that is why I suggested that the two of you, either of you, should direct or guide as to who will be appropriate to brief the House on this baby selling syndicate. So I am a bit disappointed that the leader of government business shifted the responsibility to you, Mr. Speaker. I think that as leader of government business, you should also perhaps as to how this House can be briefed on that very, important, urgent national matter of selling babies, at our various hospitals. I think that as leader of government business, I expect him to give us an indication of how this House can be briefed on that very urgent, important matter. The baby selling syndicate in government hospitals especially. Baby selling syndicate. Thank you.
Former Minister for Communications, now presidential nominee for communications.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to make a small suggestion about the time that business commences in this House, as has been recommended by the Business Committee, and in response to the intervention made by the Honourable Member for Banda. Mr. Speaker, the challenges that this House faces because of the outcome of the elections are all too apparent to all of us. And I believe that has necessitated the recommendations made by the Business Committee. In the UK and in other legislatures where all ministers are members of Parliament, sitting commences at 3 or 4 p.m. to accommodate the work that the executive would need to do in the various ministries. And I believe that if a similar situation were adopted by this House, we would all be able to incorporate that into our daily schedules and ensure that the work of the House goes on with the full participation of those who would be members of the executive, who would also like to participate and contribute their quota to the work of this House, in addition to ensuring that the work of government also goes on without hindrance. And I believe that that compromise, if members would be so minded to consider it, would inure to the benefit of both the House and the executive, and ensure the full participation of members of parliament who are slated to become ministers of state as well. As we've seen, now that Parliament's kind indulgence sits at 2 p.m., we're able to do our work in the morning and then come and participate in full when we start sittings in the afternoon. And if we continue with that practice, I was even going to advocate that sitting commences at 3 p.m. so that we could complete our work in the various ministries and then come back and participate fully in the work of the House, so that Parliament doesn't suffer because some of its members are compelled to also work in the various ministries by virtue of the nature of our constitutional provisions. So I'd crave the indulgence of members on both sides of the House to consider that this is a consequence. The current situation is a consequence of the peculiar nature of this 8th Parliament. And I am excited about it because I believe that it will bring out the best in all of us and enable us to fully participate in debates in the House so that we can all benefit from the experience of each other and grow the legislative wing of Parliament as well. In the previous situation, we have found that because of the nature of their work, several ministers are unable to participate fully in the deliberations in the House. That mandates that the majority of ministers must come from Parliament. That's a constitutional injunction. And Mr. Speaker, we all swore.
Honorable former Minister, please kindly address the chair. Don't react to heckling or whispers. Just focus on your point and address the chair. I'll be talking on this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are all obliged to live up to the oaths that we swore to uphold and defend and apply the Constitution of the Republic of Ghana, which ties the President's hand in the choice of his ministers. And so, through no fault of ours, we're faced with a situation which makes it difficult for this House to also function fully if we do not make the accommodations necessary to support the work of the legislature and the work of the executive. And so I would urge members to live with the situation that we find ourselves in, make the necessary compromises and accommodations which would enable both arms of government to function efficiently. And at the end of the day, I'm sure when the record of the 8th Parliament comes to be read, it would be seen as one of the best parliaments ever, which have lived up to its responsibilities of legislative oversight and ensure that all members of this House are given the space, the time, and the room to participate fully in all its deliberations. I thank you, Mr.
Honourable members, we have a lot of work today. We are still at business committee. You know, I don't believe I can take all of you. I will take 2 from my left and then 2 from my right. and that will end it. So those of you on your feet, you have to allow two. You have difficulty in deciding. I will listen to the lady in front of me.
Thank you. Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. About the sitting time, let us be honest with ourselves. We come to work at 10. At times, we end up starting, or we end up sitting from 12, or either 1 or 2. So my view is that let us sit down and discuss this matter in a way that will not make us continue to waste our time sitting in the chamber. The speaker is not here, the leaders are not here, and then the media will also be sitting up there, and we end up closing very late. We agree, I agree with my whip, deputy whip, that the 2 o'clock is not good for us. So we must find a way to be in the middle. So my personal view is that, please, even though the order, it is stated
Honorable woman, honorable lady, sorry, this matter is not yet ripe for debate. It has been proposed in the new standing orders. You will have the opportunity to debate that issue, and I will be bound by the decision of the House. But so far as the circumstances of the present, I exercise my discretion in usually adjourning the House to 2 p.m. by virtue of the provisions of Order 44 of the standing orders of this House. And so nothing untoward, nothing irregular has been done. When the issue crops up, please take the decision. The Speaker will be bound by it and will go accordingly. As of now, it's too premature to start arguing on that issue. So let's drop that issue and move to others. Chief Whip. Yes, majority.
Speaker, I thank you for your kindness, and Speaker, I'm relying on your good wisdom for your guidance on this matter I wish to raise. Ordinarily, I wouldn't have, but it's important we set the record straight. My good friend, the Honorable Ablakwa.
For the guidance of which matter? Which matter?
Speaker, I'm raising the matter with your kindness.
You are to raise a new matter.
No, it's a matter the Honorable Ablakwa and the Honorable Suhini brought into work, and I wish to speak to it. And the matter is simple, Speaker. The Honorable Ablakwa and the Honorable Suhini seem to have a well-rehearsed strategy to refer to the majority caucus as a majority group. I heard him loud and clear. And I heard the Honorable Suhini also repeated that. Speaker, I am employing you to advise my colleagues to refer to us indeed as the majority caucus, as Speaker you rightly rule. And I pray they take a cue from that directive from your good self, Speaker.
Honorable, please kindly take your time and read the standing orders. We have parliamentary parties in the House, 2 parliamentary parties with 1 independent member. The independent member opted to associate with 1 parliamentary party, and He is only associating with them to transact business. So when you add the independent member to the MPP parliamentary party, they two form a group. And that is why in my ruling, I refer to it as majority parliamentary group. The term caucus is not used in our standing orders. It is in practice, and it refers to an identified group of people. So you can have a regional caucus, you can have a gender caucus, you can have a Catholic caucus. There's so many caucuses. But you have parliamentary parties. For us, in the A Parliament, there are two parliamentary parties. The NDC Parliamentary Party. In your constitution, sometimes they refer to it as parliamentary wing of the party. And then the MPP Parliamentary Party. But with the one independent, they form the majority parliamentary group. I don't want any more confusion on this matter. The standing orders further provides. The standing orders further provides that the majority group will be led by, and that leader is referred to as majority leader. And Order 160 and Order 168 demands that those committees, the business committee and the House committee, led by the majority leader. That is the standing orders we have now. And I'm guided by that. I'm bound by it anyway. So please, don't keep confusing the public. So the Honorable Oseche Mensah Bonsu is the majority leader. The Honorable Haruna Idrisu is the minority leader. Honorable members, well, Honorable Suhini, since there was reference to you by the Chief Whip, yes? Yes, Honorable Suhini.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise on point of order 90, and I stand on order 93-2 against the majority group Chief's Whip, who suggested in his presentation that he accused myself and Honorable Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa of having a well-rehearsed strategy. And Mr. Speaker, I think it amounts to improper motive being assigned to the two of us, and there's a need for him to withdraw and apologize to us for imputing improper motives, imputing improper motives to our intentions. I thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. He must withdraw and apologize.
Are you sure the motive was?
Honorable Majority Chief Whip. Honorable Majority Chief Whip. Any response?
Speaker, I think in this House we all rely on your wisdom and your experience. And you have given the directives. I will want to respect the directive you have given and not go into any uncharted waters. So, Speaker, may you live long for putting clarity on this matter. And I respect and humbly take a cue accordingly.
Well, please, let's allow matters to be as they are, because he said well-rehearsed strategy. He did not use any word to impute improper motive. The strategy is well-rehearsed, and there's nothing wrong with having a well-rehearsed strategy, provided it is not against anything that we do here or the national interest. It must be to further the national interest. It must be to further the discourse in the House, and also to facilitate the business of the House. So there's nothing improper about that. Let's move on. Please, let's move on. Please, let's move on. Any other important matter, let's take it another day. Honorable Ablakwa, what is so important and urgent that you can't wait? Yes.
Right, Mr. Speaker, very, very important. The leader of government business is seeking to get the appointments committee to hold on with its work. And we need your guidance based on the approval that this House.
I am to respond to 3 issues, including what you are talking about. Yes.
You are covering it.
Yeah, because the Speaker. This
Honorable,
House,
please, I'm going to respond to that.
So if I'm understanding, Mr. Speaker,
Please, hold your peace. Honorable members, the communication from the President ended with this. I quote the President: "I would be grateful if Parliament would expedite the process of prior approval of my nominees so they can take up their positions in government forthwith." Expedite, forthwith. We have already composed the Committee of Selection, the Business Committee, and the Appointments Committee, and I accordingly referred the nominees for prior approval through the process that has been established by this House, and I referred them to the appropriate committee, which is the existing Appointment Committee. So please, you are directed to immediately commence work with the processes for us to give prior approval to the persons that have been referred to us by His Excellency the President. So please, as we go along, the other matters will be sorted out. As of now, we are bound by the provisions of our standing orders. We are masters of our own rules. This is constitutional. But there is no good reason for us to differ from the current practice. With regard to the issue raised by Honorable Suhini, I don't think we have to always keep on relying on the executive to give us briefs. is for us to do research and use the available tools for members of parliament. That will compel them to be available. Other a well-researched statement, which will be made available to the other side, and then the minister will be compelled to come to the House. And as you raise the issues and make comments and make inputs, the minister will be given the opportunity to respond. We don't always have the leisure of time to give the ministers some opportunity to then come and brief us. And usually the briefs are not even in plenary. And it's usually difficult to handle the reports. I'm sharing this experience with you. The third issue about the time, even though I've ruled, this issue started as far back as the second parliament of the Fourth Republic. It's not new. I want us to bring finality to this issue. I'll be there to guide the House, together with some of my colleagues, with the experiences of the other jurisdictions, but with more particular details as to the reason why it should either be 10 or 2 or 4. Ghana's unique situation, what is expected of us, that will be the guide. We will draw inspiration from other jurisdictions, but we will actually base our decision on our circumstances as a country. Please. I think these are the 3 outstanding issues, and I will plead with you to let us move on to the other items. Honorable members, the business statement as presented by the chairman of the business committee is adopted. We now move to item 5. Statements. Honorable members, I have admitted 3 statements, but for very good reason, I will defer 2 to Tuesday, because we have a very important statement standing in the name of the minority leader, the Honorable Haruna Idrisu, MP for Tamal South, which is a tribute to the late Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings, our late illustrious president, former president. And so we want to give members some opportunity to express themselves before the funeral began on Sunday. And so I'll give the opportunity to the Honorable Minority Leader to present the statement. Honorable Member, you may do so now.
Speaker, let me thank you for the opportunity to pay tribute to the late Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings, former President of the Republic of Ghana. Mr. Speaker, trying to tie up a tribute to the longest-serving political leader Ghana has ever had in a few minutes will be similar to attempting the impossibility of summarizing a third of the post-independent history of Ghana on a few sheets of script. But within the restrictions opposite to such a tribute, we asked who was Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings, born June 22, 1947, who passed on to eternity 12 November 2020. Mr. Speaker, Flight Lieutenant Jerry Rawlings, or Papa J, as he was affectionately called, was a paradox, an enigma of an institution. He is an enduring institution which values will continue to define us as a people and guide the progress of our nation. His commitment to the principles of justice, equity, probity, and accountability is unparalleled. No wonder in the preamble to the 1992 Constitution, which was promulgated under his leadership, those words remain high. Mr. Speaker, the 1992 Constitution remains the most enduring constitution since the birth of Ghana, surviving almost 3 decades and seen through the transition from one political party to another, unprecedented again in our history. Mr. Speaker, President Rawlings burst into the political space in Ghana on 15 May 1979, driven by a mission to have the political leadership at the time to account for their misrule. The military regime at the time, which was composed of senior officers of the armed forces, had used their positions to exploit and to accumulate unjust and undeserved. The social fabric and the economy was run down by the regime. In his view, the military administration had completely and blatantly desecrated the military code of conduct and thereby sinking the image of the country around. As a young officer, Flight Lieutenant Jerry Rawlings led a group of men of the Ghana Armed Forces, other ranks, to bring their senior officers in government to book and to account to the people by taking over the reign of government. Unfortunately, they were unsuccessful and were arrested and court-martialed. President Rawlings' selflessness and courage was demonstrated when he pleaded with the court to acquit the other men standing trial with him. He was willing to bear the consequences and suffer the punishment of the insurrection alone, with those famous words, "Leave my men alone." Mr. Speaker, the trial of President Rawlings' May 1979 insurrection led to the June 4th uprising, when a group of junior officers and other ranks who bought into his vision to cleanse the system of the rot stormed the Bureau of National Investigation, the BNI cells, where he was detained, and freed him to lead the June 4th uprising. The success of the uprising led to the formation of the Armed Forces Revolutionary Council, the AFRC, with the core principles of probity, accountability, and transparency. The Speaker will urge the Hansard Department to capture the full text. Mr. Speaker, the failure of then civilian administration to live by the values and tenets espoused by the June 4th uprising compelled Rawlings to lead some junior officers and men to change the administration through a revolution in December 1981. The wheels of progress were grinding towards the opposite direction at the time, with the country experiencing shortages of food, basic necessities of life. Hospitals were without drugs, and the economy had completely run down. We became the butt of scoffing jokes of other African countries who were then better off, and to those shores, our skilled and unskilled labor flocked in droves. Mr. Speaker, you may relate to the situation of 1981, I believe. Mr. Speaker, the mass migration of Ghanaians to other African countries started having a toll on the economies of this country. As a result, by 1983, with the revolution just about a year old, about 2.1 million Ghanaians had to be deported from Nigeria, and President Rawlings mobilized the available resources, including the deployment of ships from the Black Star Line and the Ghana Navy, aircraft from Ghana Airways and the Ghana Air Force, and buses to convey these Ghanaians who were deported back home. Mr. Speaker, with determination and Rawlings was able to reverse the socio-economic decline and restore the economy back on track. The shortages and queues in the system became a thing of the past. The infrastructure, which had broken down to years of neglect, was largely restored. Power from the Akusumbo electric grid was extended to all the 10 regions and to the 110 district capitals. He contributed to expanding decentralization in our country. Mr. Speaker, the leadership qualities exhibited by General Rawlings in navigating Ghana through the turbulent economic crisis at the time was appropriately summarized by John Adedeji of the Western Michigan University in his article, The Legacy of J.J. Rawlings in Ghanaian Politics, 1979 to 2000, and with your indulgence, I quote, Rawlings, unlike many other leaders in Ghana's history, subsequently led the country through the difficult years of economic recovery and succeeded in giving back to Ghanaians their national pride. This is the man we mourn today, Mr. Speaker. Referencing Professor Naomi Chazan of the Hebrew University, Dr. Adedeji further noted that without Rawlings' strength of character and unwavering determination, Ghana would not have survived the economic recovery program. He concluded that, and I quote, Rawlings saw his leadership role to be a watchdog for ordinary people, and he addressed problems of incompetence, injustice, and corruption. Mr. Speaker, young and inexperienced as he was, President Rawlings was able to assemble some of the best human capital in the country at the time, from both the Nkrumahs and Dankwa Dombo Buzia tradition, to help in the economic recovery process. He had the eye to identify talent and was able to select some of the best young talent into his administration, some of whom today are political giants, including former President J.A. Kufuor. President Rawlings' passion for inclusiveness and the desire to create structures for others apart from the military in the governance of the country made him form the Provisional National Defense Council, the PNDC, a government composed of the military and civilians. The governance architecture also involved the establishment of institutions to allow ordinary Ghanaians participate in the administration of the country. This was the vision behind the decentralization concept. There is no doubt that the much-touted decentralization of public administration, which has seen the balanced and equitable development at the local level in Ghana, is credited to Chairman Rawlings, as he was called at the time of the PNDC. Mr. Speaker, President Rawlings was an enigma of a personality, liked by many and disliked by some. His sense of justice endeared him to many. His classmates from Achimota School note with some nostalgia his passion for justice, which dates back to his days in the school cadet corps. He always stood up for the weaker students, and he carried his attitude of justice into his adult and professional life. It was this attitude that compelled him to intervene in the governance of this country. Yet he was disliked by some and attributes the masses did not support. Admittedly, Mr. Speaker, there were some excesses in the early days of the revolution, and some see this as a blot on what he stood for, which is fairness and justice. Mr. Speaker, the quality of his leadership skills, President Rawlings was recognized by his peers in ECOWAS, leading to his election as chairman of the sub-regional body between 1994 and 1996. He was also awarded the World Hunger in 1993, which came in with a cash prize of $50,000 US. He generously donated this cash prize as seed money for the establishment of the University of Development Studies, which has contributed immensely to expanding access to higher education in Ghana. Mr. Speaker, Ghana's fourth public university and the first in northern Ghana was the UDS established by him. The self-effacing person he largely remained. Mr. Speaker, There were debates as to whether the university should be named after him or not. In his lifetime, he rejected those suggestions. Mr. Speaker, Rawlings has been credited for giving strength and validity to the so-called African constitutional revival, starting from the 1990s. Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh, Executive Director of the Center for Democratic Development, CDD Ghana, writing in 2000, cited Rawlings handing over of power after his second term as leading the way for the institutionalization of the presidential term limit in Africa, with Kenya, Daniel Arap Moi, Zambia's Frederick Chiluba, and Malawi's Muluzu. Mr. Speaker, he navigated and transited Ghana from militarism to multi-party constitutional democracy, the most stable in the last 25 years, to his credit. President Rawlings was a true son of Africa and a peace builder in Africa. Ghana, under his leadership, was the first African country to move into Liberia to stop the carnage during the civil war in Liberia, then to Sierra Leone and Guinea with its own resources before the international community later came in with support. Under his leadership, Ghana was in Rwanda during the genocide and remained there even at a time that the international community, including the United Nations, withdrew their personnel, all in his quest to save lives and to contribute to the stability of Africa. Today, Ghana is an oasis of peace in a troubled West African sub-region. Our democracy continued to chalk successes year in and year out, making us the beacon of hope for constitutional rule in the African continent. The credit for this rare length of political peace and stability with concomitant economic growth goes to the extensive and all-inclusive consultations fostered through the tireless work of the National Commission for Democracy. At Face Hearted, the NCD was then chaired by Venerable Justice Daniel Francis Annan, who subsequently became of this August House under the Fourth Republic. To this unrivaled legacy of Rawlings, the epitaph in Latin to St. Christopher Waring, the architect of the world-famous St. Paul's Cathedral that adorns the skyline of central London, will be applicable as far as the institutionalization of democratic governance in contemporary Ghana goes. That epitaph goes, if you will seek my monument, look around you. Mr. Speaker, the Kenyan-born Professor Ali Mazuri, delivering the 8th Dubois Padmore Nkrumah Memorial Lectures, observed that Rawlings left an open society and set the stage for effective democratic progress in Ghana. Mr. Speaker, with your indulgence, I quote Professor Ali Mazuri. Rawlings began with a coup in 1979, came back with military takeover in 1981, won power through 1992, and again in 1996, and stepped down in 2000 without manipulating the system to his personal or his party's advantage. Not only did Rawlings step down from power, he allowed the electoral process to be transparent. To the extent that his own party was defeated in the 2000 election, observes Professor Ali Mazuri. This is the mettle and measure of the man J.J. Rawlings, whom we eulogize today. Ghana has lost a great. Africa has lost a Pan-Africanist. Mr. Speaker, to Nana Akufo-Addo Agyeman Rawlings, who remains an important force in our democratic revolution, and to the children, particularly one of our very own, Dr. Zanata Agyeman Rawlings, the Member of Parliament for Klote Kole, Betui, Tamaklo, and allied families, and indeed to the Rawlings family, I offer my heartfelt sympathies and condolences. We thank you for giving us an illustrious son of a political colossus for Ghana and Africa. To our party, the National Democratic Congress,
I understand that National Chairman Ofosu, probably if he's part of your guest to the House today, we owe you a debt of gratitude, and we assure you that we will uphold your legacy and the values you so cherish as long as we exist as a political party. Mr. Speaker, for me as a young member of Parliament, what warms my heart that even 1 month into the death of President Rawlings, the NDC fared well and performed well in the competitive elections of December 2020 with 137. It means our great party, the NDC, have been born and birthed as a major political force in our constitutional democratic process. On my own behalf and on behalf of the NDC caucus in this House, I render sincere sympathies to the President and the people of Ghana on the departure of our former head of state, Flight Lieutenant General John Rawlings. From this earthly realm, Ghana's youngest state and longest ever president of our republic, may his soul rest in peace. Mr. Speaker, I only can be concluded by a quote from President Bush, who once observed that grief and tragedy and hatred are only for a time. Goodness and love have no end, and the Lord of life hold all who die and who mourn in him. May God grant him eternal peace and rest. Jerry John Rawlings, Papa J, you are gone with your sense of humor. That rich sense of humor. Mr. Speaker, may his soul rest in perfect peace. I thank you.
Honorable members, I have been guided by the leaders, and I have the list of those that the various leaders have submitted to comment on this statement. And on the majority side, I have Honorable Joe Gatti. Honorable Joe Gatti, the Member of Parliament, Esikadu Ketan. Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to contribute to the statement. And let me say from the outset that I add my voice and adopt everything that was said by the minority leader and identify with it. But Mr. Speaker, like him or hate him, for several decades of our political life as a nation and of my life as a person, President Rawlings ruled over Ghana like a colossus. Even after President Rawlings stopped being the president of Ghana, his relevance in Ghana and Ghanaian politics cannot be denied. We remember that the whole country waited, hoping that at the appropriate time, he will make comments on national issues and make statements that came to be known as boom statements. And whether he liked it or not, President Rawlings was relevant in our life. Mr. Speaker, in 1979, in May, when he attempted his first coup, that is when he came to national prominence. June 4th, he was successful, and I remember as a young man then in secondary school, we all marched to Kwamasu oil plantation to go and weed at that time. Mr. Speaker, the reasons that were given to us for us to make the sacrifice to carry cocoa and so on were attractive visions at the time. We're being asked to be nationalistic and to support our country. And the most attractive reason for some of us at the time was that President Rawlings promised that within 3 months he would hand over back to democratic. Well, Mr. Speaker, for some of us, democracy is the best form of governance, even though perhaps it is not perfect. But Mr. Speaker, there's none perfect but God. So I must confess, when he ill will towards President Rawlings, that when he came back in 1981, my enthusiasm for him was not as much as my enthusiasm was for him in 1979. And Mr. Speaker, in 1982, I happened to be in Legon then, and I was part of the students who embarked on a series of demonstrations calling for the return to democratic rule. I remember that at Graphic Road, a gunshot was fired, Mr. Speaker, ostensibly into the air. But I had not heard a gunshot so close to me before, so I felt I'm thinking I was dead. Mr. Speaker, after lying down for a few seconds, I realized that I was not dead. I realized that I was not bleeding. So, Mr. Speaker, I scuttled away as fast as I could, and that was the end of our demonstration at Graphic Road. And it ended by us staying at home for a year. The universities were closed down for a year. I must say that by the time I came back after the year, I become hardened in my views that the best form of governance was democracy. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm somebody who spent the greater part of his political life fighting for the return of democratic governance. But in 1992, after the return of the country to democratic rule, I had the opportunity to present the counter report on Ghana on behalf of the Ghana Committee on Human Rights and Administrative Justice in Addis Ababa at a meeting of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. And at that time, the Honorable Minority Leader was also a member of the Ghana Committee on Human and People's Rights. The Speaker was the National Secretary. Our current President was the National Chairman. And then the Minority Leader was on our side at that time. But today, he's on the other side. But, Mr. Speaker, that is life. And he went to me, and I remember I made the point to the African Commission that our human rights situation had improved dramatically. That there were provisions in the 1992 Constitution which guaranteed fundamental human rights. And I said they were one of the most forward-looking provisions of human rights in Africa at the time. Some of my colleagues from other African countries who we had been in the human rights struggle with said that, but Rawlings is just there, why are you saying that? And some of them thought that perhaps we were not entirely saying the truth at the time. But, Mr. Speaker, when you look at the history of governance of this country, you cannot but admit that this constitution, the 1992 Constitution, is the most enduring constitution. And in fact, even though historically it has its historic antecedents in various constitutions, for example, the provisions on human rights can trace their history to the 1969 Constitution, where the first Bill of Rights was extensive Bill of Human Rights. You cannot deny that this constitution has done something for Ghana. In fact, the hybrid system that we operate is a result of what happened during the 1979 era, the 1979 Constitution, when the executive was different from the legislature. So I am somebody who is against this wholesale review of the Constitution, and we must thank the President Rawlings, for shepherding the 1992 Constitution into effect. Because, Mr. Speaker, we are aware that there are people who were heads of state in President Rawlings' time who are still heads of state now, so many years later. I mean, I didn't mention names. Somebody is encouraging me to mention Museveni's name. I didn't mention it. I will resist that temptation from the member. He said, he said I mentioned it already. But Mr. Speaker, this is the man that we talk about. A man of many sides. A man who we say or we know that before the 1992 Constitution was not a Democrat, but became a Democrat. Mr. Speaker, 2000, The presidential election was held before the parliamentary election. When the presidential election was held, the NPP boycotted the parliamentary election. The 92, thank you, the 92. I stand corrected, 92. And the NPP boycotted the parliamentary election and wrote the stolen verdict. The Speaker, once again, your humble servant, I was part of the team that wrote the stolen verdict. And it was chaired, that team was chaired by the current president. But the interesting thing about this is that I also, at that time, was the secretary to the legal committee of the Ghana Bar Association. And even though it was a parliament largely with only one party, with a few minor parties, we appeared before various committees, and that time you were sitting at the Pink Lady at the International Conference Center. I remember the Serious Fraud Office bill. And the Serious Fraud Office bill, the Ghana Bar Association had serious exceptions to the bill. We appeared before the committee. I think, Mr. Speaker, I saw you there then, if I can remember. I see you nodding your head. And I remember Honorable Dua Jawa as well. And we appeared with Honorable Peter Jete, Samoku Jete, and we made extensive input into the bill. And indeed, the executive at the time, that was President Rawlings, did not dispute or did not fight with us when we made those extensive introductions. And he assented to the bill when he finally went with the introductions that we made as civil society organizations. Mr. Speaker, unfortunately for us now today, the civil society organizations and the Ghana Bar Association and so on do not no longer contribute to our process. They prefer, I think that it's now easier for you to talk on radio than to do. So, Mr. Speaker, I am using this occasion to encourage civil society, Ghana Bar Association and so on, to keep us on our toes. There was a time that no bill went without input from this organization. And I'm sure that under your guidance and the guidance of the two leaders, that will be reintroduced. Mr. Speaker, the most interesting thing about President Rawlings for me, as a student of investment law, is that when you look at the history of the law of investment in our country, you will see that during the Champon time, was involved in what he described as Ghanaians taking the commanding heights of our economy. So during the Champon era, what happened was that there was a separate law for promotion of Ghanaian business, and there was a minor law for promotion of foreign business. Indeed, it was during the Lehman era, with the 1981 investment code at the time, that the two laws on promoting Ghanaian business and promoting foreign business were merged into one. Now, President Rawlings, no doubt, came in as a socialist, and he believed in a certain form of government. But at our laws, when you are doing research on our laws, you will notice that it was during this era, during the economic program era, that the most progressive laws perhaps were made on investment promotion. I recall that I happened to give a lecture in South Africa after the minerals and mining law, at the time, minerals and mining law had come into effect in 1985. And after I gave that lecture, it was generally agreed that perhaps we had one of the most progressive laws on minerals and mining in the country. So this was a man who was a guy in the Wu socialist, who at the same time was part of a process which saw our economy taking a step. And then we come to President Rawlings post his presidency. And some of the most interesting scenes that we see is that we see pictures of President Rawlings and President Akufo-Addo in tete-a-tete. These are two men who previously were against each other. We are talking about President Akufo-Addo, who was one of the leaders of the Preku demonstration, who was committed to ensuring that a certain form of governance will come, and President Rawlings, who was also committed to another form of government, who can now arrive at a situation where you hear them talking to each other, you don't even know what they are talking about. You just see picture of what they are talking about. What does it teach us of us that are here? What does it teach us? That is the question we must ask ourselves. The Speaker, it is Shakespeare who talked about the changing scenes of life. First of all, each man having his entry and exit. It teaches us that we must be humble. It teaches that life changes. It teaches that, yes, we may not agree with each other, but we must not be enemies. It teaches us that we must tell our supporters that after we finish talking in this chamber, we're going to drink tea at the back. Mr. Speaker, I've hardly had to pay for my tea myself. When I sit down and I buy the tea, then this Honorable Abu Jenapo is claiming he buys his tea for me. I must say that I've seen him as a very stingy friend. I've had no, he has not, he has not, if he wants me to mention him for the record, then when he sees me going to the tea place, you follow me. I'm going to pay for my tea. But Mr. Speaker, the beautiful thing is that, Mr. Speaker, yes, thank you. I'll say that again for the record. I'll say that Honorable Abu Jinapo, when I said that, when I said that we argue here, but after we meet at the tea place and have a chat, they must learn from our leaders, President Rawlings and President Akufo-Addo, and from us, that we don't kill each other. And when I said that Honorable Abu Jinapo raised his hand that, raised his hand that he has been, Mr. Speaker, I want to put it on record that Honorable John Jinapo has never even bought water for me. If he wants me to recognize him in the booth, if he wants to raise that, when I finish speaking, I'm going to drink tea. Follow me and buy my tea for me. Mr. Speaker, that is the beauty of life. That is the maturity that age brings to you. And that is the maturity of our democracy. That people can disagree with each other vehemently for 20, 30 years, but can end up becoming friends. And Mr. Speaker, all the people who occupy that high office of president must realize that it is such a high office that we must clothe it with some certain decorum, and they must be in a position to talk to each other. In fact, I never refer to them as former presidents. As far as I'm concerned, once you are president, you are always president. President Rawlings should rest in perfect peace. I end by once again by paraphrasing Shakespeare, who said, "The evil that men do lift after them, the good is of the earth in their boots." I pray that it does not apply to President Rawlings. He was not a perfect person. Nobody is perfect. But this Colossus, when we look at his life as a whole, we cannot but say that he came and played his part. May his soul and all the souls of the departed faithful rest in perfect peace. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, we now listen to Honorable Avoka Cletus Apul, a member of Parliament for Zebla.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, kindly permit me to add my voice to the tribute that we are paying this morning or this afternoon to our great leader who is no more with us. My first encounter with President Rawlings, then Chairman Rawlings, was in 1979 when he was chairman of the AFRC. At that time, I was doing national service in Boku, and then he came there to address a rally. And then it was at that time that the Boku conflict was raging. Then I remember while he was seated at the community center in Boku, I was part of a group that led a demonstration, written placards indicating the challenges that we have in Boku as far as the chieftaincy matter was concerned. He and his lieutenants, about 6 of them, were sitting on a bench. And then we held the placards all over, and then he read them passionately. And after that, he spoke. And then before I go to what he said, my understanding of him, or my attribute to him, is that this is a man who is forthright. This is a man who believed in social democracy. This is a person who believed in peaceful coexistence. These are the attributes that one can give to late President J.J. Rawlings. Why do I say so, Mr. Speaker? When he got up to speak, he discovered that following our placards and then the briefing that he had on, he discovered that there were 2 chiefs in Boko. One was at the community center, the other was not there. So he said, and I quote him, or paraphrase him, "I understand there are 2 chiefs in Boku. Where is the Kusasi chief? Go and bring him. Give him VIP treatment," unquote. Then the peace corps went and brought the then Kusasi chief, who was at home. I was there when he held them together, the Mampusi chief on the left, and then the Kusasi chief on the right, and appealed to them for unity. He indicated to them that he had come for a house cleaning exercise for 3 months, and therefore there was no time for them to dwell into chieftaincy matters. But if they love their people and Ghana, they should live together, they should coexist. And that Liman had won the election, they will hand their petitions over to them, and then they will look at it and bring about amicable settlement in Boku. That is why I said this is somebody who, on the spur of the moment, wanted to bring peace in Boku. And by merely saying that bring the other chief, give him VIP treatment, he had brought about peace and harmony. People, he had brought equilibrium to the town and to the group, and everybody admired him. That same day, during the rally, Boku was noted for smuggling. That is how majority of the people in Boku lived. Honorable Mama Yarga is here, and others. I'm saying so. I'm saying so that you know what was happening in Boku at the time. Mr. Speaker, he said he wanted to let the people know that it is important for us to have revenue to develop the country. He was being nationalistic. And this is what he said that also attracted the anger of the people. Yes, you Boko people, I'm quoting him, every day you knock your head against the ground like lizards, and yet after that you go and smuggle. And some of the Muslim clerics were annoyed and started leaving the rally grounds and the rest of them. But the message has been sent to them that try to be nationalistic, try to support your country, don't smuggle. So he was forthright. This is what I want to say, that he was forthright in terms of handling the chieftaincy matter, in terms of handling trading activity in the area. He was very forthright, and that is what we can attribute to late President Rawlings. My second encounter with him was in 1983. 1983, when he was PNDC chairman, Provincial National Defense Council chairman, he wanted lawyers to head the public tribunals, and it was very, very difficult. Most of the bar associations had declared that they would not take part in the administration. So they approached some of us, and I agreed to become chairman of the public tribunal for the Upper East, Upper West, and Northern region. And I served as such for 2 years, 83, 84. Mr. Speaker, the point I want to make is this, that at that meeting about the public tribunals, he said, look, I don't want discrimination, I don't want favoritism, I want you to dispense justice fairly. I want you to dispense popular justice. And that is how the 1992 Constitution was informed when we talk about popular participation. I'll come to that later. Mr. Speaker, my other encounter with him, very bitter, was in 1986. In 1986, following the intermittent clashes in Boku in 83, 84, and 85, the PNDC administration decided to undertake a military cum police intervention. The PNDC administration decided to make a police cum military intervention in Boku. The idea was to try to end the intermittent clashes in the area. I was in Bolga at the time. So they said they should go and investigate and arrest those who have been causing the conflict, those who have been fighting, those who have been causing arson, and opinion leaders of the area to see how we can broker peace in the area in Boku. I was one of those who was picked. And for 10 days, I was kept in the guard room at Mognori, a village in Boku called Mognori, without even battle. I had to protest for my freedom because I was not a common criminal. He said I was arrested because I'm an opinion leader. Then they said, okay, the chairman said that they should bring us to Accra so that we will do dialogue. We said that was good enough. From Boku straight to Navrongo prisons because we got to the Paga airport airstrip and there was no Air Force plane coming that day. So they sent us to the Navrongo prisons. Mr. Speaker, because I was formerly a chairman 2 years ago and I had imprisoned Navrongo prisons, when I was entering the prison, they stood up, lined and said, oh, Master, you two, they come here. Master, you two, they come here. And I said, yes, I've come to join you. But that was over one night or two. Then we came to Gonda Barracks. Between January 1986 and June 1986, I was part of those who were detained in Gonda Barracks and 5BN. They had virtually abandoned us. Those of our mates who were in the military, young officers, anytime they came to see somebody, they were embarrassed. So they said, look, you people, Boko people, after we have forgotten about it, the Chama has forgotten it. Write a joint petition, indicate how you are now united, you have to go back and then solve your problems, and then therefore you can get your independence. We wrote a common petition, and then they came one day and said, where are the Boko people? Then we came back. We thought they were sending us home. We said, either send us to court, grant us bail, or release us. Then we got back to Boko and straight into Boko prisons. For 10 days, nobody was saying anything until the prison director went and advised them that we were there illegally and that they should do something. Mr. Stewart was at that stage that they brought a circuit court judge who was on leave from Tamale to come and let us sign a bond to hold the peace of Boko. I'm saying all this to say that between 1986 and 2000, as a result of the Rawlings intervention, police community intervention, there was absolute peace in Boko. There was no conflict in Boko between 1986 and 2000, 14, 15 years. Both tribes and all tribes could move anywhere, do business and whatnot. That is a legacy of President Rawlings that we had in Boko. Then, of course, the situation deteriorated on the 7th of December 2000 when we had the elections and the votes were tilting this way and that way. The conflict escalated and the rest of them. My other encounter with the president, late President Rawlings, was in 1991 when he nominated me as a member of the Assembly. 1991, August, we were nominated. Then we started working in August in the end of March 1992. Then, if you get to know the composition of the members of the Consultative Assembly, members were drawn from all types of professions: hairdressers, carpenters, tailors, bar association, ex-teachers, chiefs, tailors, etc. They came and made this 1990 new constitution that we are now benefiting. He did not discriminate because he said that when we came there, he said that, look, justice belongs to the people. Prepare a constitution that can stand the test of time. Take note of the 1969 or independent constitution, 69 constitutions, and all over, and make sure that this constitution stands the test of time. Of that time, people shunned the constitution like Honorable Joe Gatt was talking about and others. But that is the constitution that has lasted the longest time here in this country. That's the constitution that has served us most. And that's the constitution that has addressed us. And if we look at the beginning of the constitution, Article 1 of the constitution, it talks about the fact that power derives from the people. And this is the legacy that we owe to great President Rawlings, that he made us draw a constitution that has stood the test of time. And I think it is important that we pay tribute to this, our president. The other time that I encountered him was during the time that I was a member of his cabinet. Our regional minister, then later our Minister for Lands and Forestry, and then the Environment, Science and Technology, up to 2000 that he handed over. And one thing about him is that he is normally the first to be in the cabinet meeting. Punctuality, discipline were very important for him. Punctuality and discipline. And then you come to cabinet and he will look at you from your head to the toe. He will find out what type of watch you are wearing and then what type of shoe you are wearing. This was the period of probity and accountability and honesty. If you were wearing the most expensive watch, after that he will talk to you. If your dress was such that it was out in tune, the ordinary man in Ghana, after that he will talk to you. But at the cabinet meeting, he would not say anything. But the vice president would normally chair and talk and whatnot. But he appreciated intelligent debate. And after he called on phone and said the issue you raised about this and that, he liked it or he didn't like it and what have you and the rest of them. This is President Rawlings. That he gave everybody opportunity to express himself in cabinet. He made sure that you addressed the issues. He made sure that you came there early. He made sure that you did not live about the means of the average Ghanaian in the country. This is somebody whose legacy that we cannot forget in this country. And then, Mr. Speaker, if I finally conclude, during his era, so many important laws, So many important interventions have been made that we cannot forget, that have brought about the progress of this country this far. Look at Get Fund 2000. I remember I was here when some people on the other side walked out. Get Fund 2000, I was here. Look at Get Fund, VAT law. There were demonstrations all over that the VAT law was intended to impoverish people. I don't, well, you know it. You know it. There were demonstrations. Meanwhile, they have not changed the VAT law. Meanwhile, they have not changed the Get Fund law. That time, Speaker Garba was the minister. And that time, in fact, Honorable John Mahama was his deputy or so. Yes, I mean, we are here, and we saw what happened in the country. But it's the Get Fund that is now contributing to the infrastructure development of this country. It is the VAT law that now brings out the revenue for us to develop this country. Look at decentralization, rural electrification, rural development. These are all attributes of late President Rawlings. I think that this is somebody who should eulogize. This is somebody that should emulate his example. I'm happy about the example Honorable Joel Gatti gave. Initially, President Akufo-Addo and Rawlings may not come together and shake hands, not to talk about share ideas. Today, until his demise, they were doing that. And this is a lesson to all of us, that politics is not a do and die affair. It is a sharing ideas, and that is the way we should live. That is the way we should treat each other. We shouldn't treat each other in the hostile manner. So may I conclude, Mr. Speaker, by quoting what Macbeth had said. I remember as a literature student, Macbeth's wife had died, Lady Macbeth, and when they told him that the king, the lady is dead, he paused. Then he had to say this in honor of his wife. And with your kind permission, I want to also quote without reading. As a literature student, I still remember it because that was GCE O-Level 1970 that I wrote. Yes. Mr. Speaker, this is what he said, and I quote, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this dirty place from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time, and all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, out, brief candle. Life is but a walking shadow, a poor player that thrusts and presses out upon the stage and is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Unquote. Mr. Speaker, there is one phrase there that I will invite this August House to take note of. That life is but a walking shadow. Life is but a walking shadow. Don't think that what you are today is what you will be tomorrow. If you get that in the morning, in the afternoon, it is very short. 2 o'clock, it is very long. 9, it diminishes. You don't see it. That is how life is. And that is why Macbeth said that life is but a walking shadow. And I therefore humbly invite everybody to take note that when we are taking care of the people's needs and the rest of them, we should know that tomorrow is very important. On that note, Mr. Speaker, I thank you for this opportunity, and I pray that the death of Rawlings will unify this country. I pray that the family will take note of these concerns, of these lavish tribute that we have paid to the family, and then I pray, I give them condolences, Mother Ghana, NDC, and everybody. I thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Jinapo Samuel Abdullahi, the Member of Parliament for Damongo.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to the statement made by the Honorable Minority Leader. Mr. Speaker, in his lifetime, it was very difficult to dissect the life of President Rawlings. And I think it's even more difficult after his passing. Mr. Speaker, this being my first time my first opportunity to speak on this floor. It even makes it more daunting, Mr. Speaker, but I draw inspiration from your famous words. I take my destiny in my own hands. Mr. Speaker, a lot has been said about President Rawlings. And whatever you say about President Rawlings, Mr. Speaker, you cannot take the credit away from him for the role he played in the evolution of Ghanaian democracy. Mr. Speaker, yes, on 28 April 1992, the good people of Ghana bestowed this democracy upon themselves. But without doubt, the contribution of President Rawlings in 1992, transiting as a military leader to a democratic leader, and shall I say, so pretending the transition of this country from military rule to the most enduring republic and democracy of our country. Mr. Speaker, that is a huge credit to President Rawlings. It's been said already, at the time he chalked his feet, the order at the time was military rule. Democracy was not fashionable in Africa. Some may legitimately disagree with his politics and policies. In my respectful view, this singular act of President Rawlings is very much a big legacy of his leadership. Mr. Speaker, in 2000, I should say that President Rawlings' conduct as president of our country, laid the foundation for peaceful transfers of power from one democratically elected government to the other, not only in Ghana, but in Africa. If you check the recent evolution of democracy on the continent, you cannot help but come to the conclusion that that singular peaceful transfer of power in 2000 stood in the name of President Rawlings. Mr. Speaker, I had a real privilege to interact with President Rawlings on many occasions. Sometimes I was sent to conduct business with him. And whenever we finish conducting business, he will literally detain you for 2-3 hours. And he will talk about any and everything, from botany to zoology. And every now and again, when he realized that you were lost, he will butt in. Chief, do you understand? And then you have to wake up and listen to him. Mr. Speaker, I want to conclude by stating that we may hold different political views. We may even disagree with President Rawlings passionately with respect to his politics and policies. But what you cannot take away from President Rawlings is his love, admiration, and passion for the ordinary people. I saw a picture of him, a famous picture of him, kneeling down to speak to a cripple. A picture of a time when he was a military ruler in his military uniform, on his knees and talking to a cripple. He couldn't help challenging the system and insisting that the ordinary people of this country be catered for. Mr. Speaker, we all know the relationship, the evolution of the relationship of President Rawlings and President Akufo-Addo. I remember very well in 2008, he wouldn't even mention President Akufo-Addo's name. He would say Kofi, the other one, Kofi Adams, Honorable Kofi Adams, I mean. But in the end, I believe they ended up building mutual respect for themselves and genuine friendship, and it is to the credit of both leaders. On the occasion of his death and the statement to pay tribute to President Rawlings, as a young man in Fufuso Nyangrupe, Damango, and its environs, who watched President Rawlings from my village in this parliament, delivering a message on the State of the Nation address and struggling with the names of traditional towns in Ghana. Mr. Speaker, I think that this House is very much appropriate that this House pays this glowing tribute to President Jerry John Rawlings, the man who worked very hard to birth the Fourth Republic, and the man who worked very hard to promote the Fourth Republic, and democratic culture in this country. May his soul rest in perfect peace until the last day of the resurrection, when we shall meet again. Amen. Thank you.
Honorable members, I hope other contributors will take a cue from the last contributor. Time is now of essence. It's the time of Honorable Kofi Adams, ED, the Member of Parliament for Buem constituency.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to contribute to this very important statement of paying tribute to no less a person but the founding father of this fourth Republican constitutional democratic process that we are all enjoying today. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, it's difficult for me, this being the very first time I'm on my feet, to speak on this floor, and the first thing I'll be doing will be to pay tribute to someone I describe as my boss, who I would have wished was alive to see me on my feet or hear me speak from this house. Indeed, I associate myself with the statement ably made by the leader of the NDC caucus. I also associate with comments made by previous speakers. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, the former president who we speak today paying tribute to, his words of "leave my men alone" did not end in 70. He stayed with him till death. He was one person who would put people way above himself. Indeed, sometimes at the risk of his life. Many persons who use the Vume Tema road most times will be surprised that a Land Cruiser will pull up and will want to then lift, and you will find only President Rawlings and the driver, or sometimes alone, because in his mind, where that person was standing will be very near a vehicle to your possible next destination. So he was willing to do that. Mr. Speaker, I have listened to the tributes. And one thing that saddens me, and I pray it's never to any leader of this country, is what we visited on our late former president. Indeed, the withdrawal of courtesies. I happened to be his aide at certain time of the period when these courtesies...
Second Deputy Speaker to take the chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When these courtesies were withdrawn, and an illustrious son who we are paying tribute today has to travel around the world, sometimes having to carry his own bags, using the ordinary routes. But actually, one thing he taught us that we must all learn was that he was really never angry. He took advantage of this attempt to humiliate him, rather to build good walls. The stones that were thrown at him, he used them for a solid foundation. It gave him the opportunity to interact with the ordinary persons, even as he traveled, to know the understanding of situations then. He was courageous, but very, very humble. Mr. Speaker, today he is gone, but there were still a number of things that were very dear to him that we can take up as a people and as a country. He was particularly interested in decentralization, that the Lord have spoken, that he really drove it. He is much more interested in how we can infuse tradition and culture into our governance. He is particularly interested in how we can make the government appointment position at the decentralized level much more useful than it is being done today. I believe we can seriously look at that. Indeed, one thing that we can never forget about President Rawlings is one key law that helped a lot of disadvantaged persons, especially our mothers who lost their husbands who didn't have a will, the Interstate Succession Law, PNDC Law 111. Indeed, women who lost their husbands had properties taken out and thrown out of their homes almost immediately. But through this law and the intervention, children from such homes and mothers from such homes got something to be able to take care of their children. I stand here today as a result of constraint of time to say, President Rawlings, Damrifa Due, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Afenyo Markins.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, save that I have my own personal views to express as a result of some personal encounter, I would have said that anything in addition to what has been said will merely be superfluous. Mr. Speaker, growing up, I didn't like the man Rawlings. A simple reason: I was told that his administration, the military junta should put it, victimized my dad. Later, as a young adult, my stepfather, who was an activist in MPP, suffered some excesses, and that added on to my dislike of his person. Again, this was a man, anytime I heard him speak, I felt inspired by his charisma. The charisma in him that caught people following him, and his sense of humor. So, Speaker, This is a man who could be singing, adapting to people's lifestyle, drinking, eating, and doing everything that would make people like him. And that was something that inspired me about him. Mr. Speaker, I had an encounter with him where I felt the humanity in his character. When somewhere 2018, I heard him say something negative about me. And I felt that instead of instructing my lawyers to sue him, I should rather engage him because he passes to be my father. Through network of his own household, a meeting was convened and we had a positive engagement. I saw him as a man who listens and ready to share ideas and will want to take the views of people. I enjoyed that encounter and I thought that people needed to know that aspect of the man. But here we are, Mr. Speaker. As every Freemason knows, death is the all human greatness. It reduces us to the same state. That's how it's supposed to be. And in some fraternal societies of honor, at the point of your initiation, you are placed in a symbolic coffin to draw your attention to that moment of your exit, that man is nothing. We've enjoyed a quote in Macbeth from the Venerable Cletus Avoca. But there's something else that perhaps I would want to add. And quote, that had I but died an hour before this chance, I would have lived a blessed life, far from this instant, for there's nothing serious in mortality. Perhaps saying that we had died before this chance wouldn't have enjoyed the value of life because we wouldn't have experienced what this man had for this country. So we are a living witness to what President Rawlings did. And Mr. Speaker, the man himself didn't want to be praised all the time. And I don't want us to seize this moment more or less saying everything positive about him. He was a man who faced life in all its forms. Negative, positive. No leader can ever be all righteous in the eyes of the people. Policies may be negative, policies may not be liked, people may do things that you may have the cause to act in a certain manner, perhaps not acceptable. And I know if Honorable Bisidek gets opportunity to be on his feet, he will share with us some moment of humor, of some experiences that that he himself felt uncomfortable at the time it happened. This is life. We shouldn't shy away from it. But then again, Mr. Speaker, I pray that Jerry Rawlings, who was successful in establishing a political tradition in this country, now known as the NDC political tradition, will be honored, even after his passing, that all his great works will be put out there, good or bad, for generation unborn to take an inspiration from. Mr. Speaker, with this, let me say to our respected colleague, Dr. Senator Rawlings. You've lost a mentor, a father. Perhaps you are in this chamber because of his leadership. I know you are saddened by his passing, but there's also one thing, that you have a great task ahead of you to ensure that you lift high the principles of that dad. I remember when we were in St. Augustine's and you were at Wesley Girls, you were leading your cadets and we're watching you. Said this young lady, you were part of the cadets and leading a command and all that. So my colleague, Member of Parliament for Colleague Clotty, we expect you to do everything within your power to ensure that the memory of your father is well celebrated by all. Though we disagree, we think that it is not about destroying each other. In the end, as Honorable Abu Jinapo said, even the person that President Rawlings disagreed with most and used certain words to describe him, they became best of friends. What do we learn from this? And sometimes we see our leaders debating and we think they are fighting. They are not fighting. They are only exchanging ideas, disagreeing. So for us at the backbench, we've got a lot to learn. We have got a lot to learn in the politics, that we do not extend our disagreement to the point of destroying the very foundation of our democracy. We should not. We should never be misled by extremist views. Extremist views will not help our country. Let us learn from Rawlings, who at a point an extremist and at another point he could be seen as a moderate. He knew when to adjust and when to adapt. These are lessons for us. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to add my voice to the statement, and I say, may the soul of Jerry John Rawlings rest in perfect peace. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable Kwabena Wayum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Ghana has come a long way. Prior to the events of May 15th and June 4th, 1979, within the space of 22 years, the country changed leaders. And we had about 6 of them. And namely, you have Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, who got the independence for us, got overthrown in 1966 coup led by General Ankara. And thereafter, in 1968, he was forced to resign. And the reign of this country was taken over by Lieutenant General Afifa, who later handed over to a civilian government led by Abifa Buzia. The government later on got truncated by General I.K. Achampong somewhere in 1979, 71, 72. And the nightmare of Ghanaians didn't stop. It continued due to political instability, economic downturn, and some social problems and instability. The cancer of corruption had eaten into the social fabric. And for so many reasons, Mr. Speaker, the May 15th and June 4th event had to take place. Mr. Speaker, today, as we eulogize and pay tribute to great man who helped to turn the tides of this country and helped to bring us where we are today, and we are placing him in history where he belongs and he deserves, rightly so. There is a book being launched currently in my constituency with the title Changes, The Dawn of a Revolution, written by Professor Kwame Addo. This book, actually, there are some acknowledgments in terms of contributors and those who did some proofreading. Clearly, it's events as it happened in June 4th and proofread by people like the late Professor Kofi Awuno and Dr. Mohammed Ben Abdallah, Guji Agbeko, Mike Amonkwafo, and so on, in 1979, under the watch of President Rawlings, cannot be so accurate in telling the story of 1979 than what it is as the content in this book. Mr. Speaker, this event is being done by Ambassador Dan Abudaki, being supported by the NDC Regional Chairman Henry Amotefe, as we speak, in South Tong, in Swagope, to be precise. Now, Mr. Speaker, permit me to quote a portion of this book that tells it all, and that is, and I quote, "The tree of democracy must inevitably be watered with blood. In this case, I am prepared to be the sacrificial lamb," unquote. And this came from Patrick Lumumba, a Pan-Africanist, a law professor, and anti-corruption crusader at the time. And clearly, somebody had to take the lead to ensure we are where we are today, with the numerous contributors praising President Rawlings for really steering the affairs of this country through the revolution, 1981, through the PNDC, and successfully transited into our democratic dispensation. Mr. Speaker, President Rawlings transcends a lot of values. Of course, per the preamble of our Constitution, which was rightly said, probity, accountability, clearly, you will notice that we will have to live those values to ensure that we are able to leave legacies as he has actually left them. A positive legacy is so important in building a society such as Ghana. Today, Mr. Speaker, I would like to look at the epilogue of this book, which then summarizes exactly what really took place in an abridged form, not really recounting the details, but it gives us some understanding and appreciation so that those who have read this book can really get it into their DNA, particularly political actors, state actors, and politicians as a whole, so that we can be well guided going forward in our activities, our actions and inactions, so we don't see a revisit of such events in our history. I will say, may I quote from this same book, and it says that Africa has seen the emergence of great leaders. The dawn of the fourth revolution inevitably captured the rare opportunity that triggered the reset button of the Kalabule pandemic.
and steadily paved the way towards a new socio-economic and constitutional paradigm by 1993. The important democratic milestone of presiding over 2 terms of an elected government and handing over power peacefully thereafter still weathers the test of time. The Rawlings Bone had actually consequently became the facilitator of the Fourth Republic and godfather of the African diaspora right to return, among others, while establishing the nation as a beacon of democracy in Africa. Mr. Speaker, he goes on to say, by dipping his hand into a blazing fire at the Revolutionary Square, the charismatic strongman of the people lives on beyond borders. And I quote one very particular statement he made at the Burma Hall, which actually says, and I quote, "I am not an expert in economics, and I am not an expert in law, but I am an expert in working on an empty stomach while wondering when and where the next meal will come from." Mr. Speaker, President Rawlings, simply empathetic as he was reflecting the Ghanaian at the time and the feelings of Ghanaians at the time and how we were and why they need to support the process. So touchy, that was how he saw the support base he saw in the process of rebuilding Ghana and bringing it to where we are currently. It is to say, currently, as has been said earlier by some speakers, that even the amazement to many how he metamorphosed as a military leader and as a democratic later leader and saw the establishment of institutions, democratic institutions through the coming into being of the 1992 Constitution, and ensure that they function properly without interference. And in selecting people to work in those places and lead those institutions, he looked out for the best, and meritocracy was the order of the day. Irrespective of who the person is and where the person hails from, or whether the person is from Anyako or from Anglo or from Sulakofe, whether you are from Boku or wherever, you were considered. Once you realize you will perform. That should be the way to go. We also saw discipline security services. Definitely, as he would always say, who born dog for you to misbehave? Yes, and of course, there ought to be the revisit of some of these principles, values, so that we can have our system and fabric well knitted, without fear. Because there's a need for us, as we eulogize our dear father, former President Rawlings, we must take these values and inculcate it into our own ways of life as politicians, as government, and all other state actors, so that we can live well and protect this long democracy that we are enjoying. It must come, it has come to stay. And that is the order. And as for me, and if it is the wish of the House and by your own pleasure, Mr. Speaker, he should be known as the father of the Fourth Republic. And not only that, some of the special days such as the June 4th and 31st December 1981, we should begin to think through and legislate and make sure that those days are celebrated across this country and have clubs in the various schools to begin to study the values that he stood for. That we will make a good way. Accountability, responsibility, probity, and all that you are giving to the justice are key things that we must begin to have at the back of our minds as we serve Mother Ghana. Mother Ghana is yearning seriously at this time for such values to be part in the way we do. Our actions and inactions must be able to reflect all this. Mr. Speaker, Well, with these few words, we want to just say that AI's place in history is also to remind all that the date of Gazette of this Constitution, the 1992 Constitution, was 15th May 1992, and that was the name of the person who actually superintended and saw the Constitutive Assembly and brought everybody across this country, especially for the person's background, to contribute into making this what it is and has stood the test of time to today. This is the legacy of Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings, who has a signature behind this book. We must safeguard this and protect it so we can move this country forward in unity. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. God bless you. May the soul of our father rest in perfect peace.
Thank you, Honorable Member. May I call Honorable Samuel Okujutu Abraka.
I'm most grateful, Mr. Speaker, for the honor done me to contribute to this very important, which has been very eloquently delivered by the leader of the NDC caucus in Parliament. Mr. Speaker, today we celebrate the founder of the Fourth Republic, who birthed this democratic dispensation under which we all gather here to espouse the values of multi-party democracy. We also celebrate the founder of the great National Democratic Congress, whose toil and sacrifices led to what has become a very formidable political force in our country. President Rawlings was larger than life, very charismatic, enigmatic, very forthright. He said it as it is. He was not always looking for favors and plaudits, even from his own side of the political divide. He stood for justice. He stood for principle. He was a man of the ordinary Ghanaian, and he must be remembered for his exceptional modesty. President Rawlings will go down in the history books as perhaps the only African military ruler who did not promote himself when he ascended the reins of power. He will be one of the very, very few, if any, who did not promote himself. At the time, what really had been the practice was that a lot of them, upon taking over and seizing the reins of power, give themselves all kinds of titles. President Rawlings did not do that. President Rawlings remained very, very modest. And there are two recent examples further illustrate that modesty. I recall that when his own government, under the era of His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama, wrote to him to seek his blessing and his permission to name an FPSO after him, because a cabinet decision had been taken that the FPSO should be named after former democratic presidents. The President Rawlings declined. Very recently, under His Excellency President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, it was written to that the University for Development Studies, which came about by his own selfless gesture of using the hunger prize he received, the $50,000, as seed capital. Remarkably, very remarkably, Mr. Speaker, President Rawlings again declined the invitation, and he added very profound words. President Rawlings said that he will rather prefer to be remembered in the hearts of men than to be remembered by monuments.
Honorable, hold on. The right honorable speaker is taking the chair back.
Yes, honorable member, continue.
Most grateful, right honorable speaker. Those profound words of President Rawlings, that he prefers to be remembered in the hearts of men than by monuments, will continue to be the defining legacy of His Excellency Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings. In his policies as president, you could tell that this is a man of great empathy, a man who dedicates his life to the well-being of the ordinary Ghanaian. It is Mr. Rawlings as president who extended electricity to the northern part of our country, Mr. Speaker. Before President Rawlings, it had been thought that that was an impossibility. He made that possible. His policies continue to reflect in the fact that under his tenure, he extended potable water in leaps and bounds in ways that had never happened in our country. And so by the time he was handing over in the year 2000, guinea worm infestation, which was a result of the lack of potable water and how Ghanaians had been exposed to very terrible sanitary conditions and lack of water, guinea worm had been virtually eradicated. It is also important to emphasize, Mr. Speaker, that his community was not in doubt and has never been in doubt. There were many people who were not too sure whether the return to multi-party democracy in 1992, if he indeed was really committed to that. We have seen a lot of his peers and people who came into power. I do not want to mention their names, but a recent report I was looking at, between 2005 and 2020, there are not less than 15 African countries where their leaders have amended the term limit provisions in their constitution so that they can stay on. And considering how very popular President Rawlings, very, very popular, if President Rawlings had decided to amend the constitution and to remove the term limit provisions, he may have continued to win elections as we have seen in other African countries. But despite the high approval rating and the high popularity he was enjoying, President Rawlings remained committed to the democratic experiment. He remained very, very committed. And Mr. Speaker, I have here the tribute that President John Agyekum Kufuor wrote on the 13th of November, eulogizing President Rawlings. President Kufuor, in the third paragraph, writes, "When the time came for him to step down as president on 7th January 2001, he obliged and obviously tried to contain whatever reservations he had about me and my government that succeeded him and his government. within the bounds of the National Constitution of 1992. In this regard, whatever doubts persisted about his commitment to democratic rule became attenuated and earned him a legacy of contributing to the sustenance of democratic governance of our country till his demise, unquote. These are the words of the man who succeeded him. Many had doubts in the year 2000 whether there will be a smooth democratic transition, whether there may not be any attempt, any shenanigans, if I'll use that word, to, as it were.
Member, just a minute. I'll have to apply Order 40, Rule 3. Having regard to the state of business of the House, I direct that sittings be held outside the prescribed period. I so direct. Please, you may continue.
Most grateful, Right Honourable Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, his commitment to the current democratic experiment is not in doubt. And I must add, Mr. Speaker, that he brought, during his tenure, a lot of international appeal to Ghana. If you look at his foreign policy, Mr. Speaker, he was credited for leading efforts towards the restoration of peace, law and order in many other African countries. He was the first leader in Liberia, in Sierra Leone, Guinea-Bissau, Togo, and he committed troops. He continued with Ghana's illustrious peace-building reputation, which since 1960, when President Nkrumah committed our first troops to Congo on the first peace operation that the Ghana Armed Forces undertook. President Rawlings attracted a lot of international accolades. Very few African presidents are invited on state visits to the United States, to the Queen in England. And he was the toast of the international community because they saw in him a consummate democrat, a leader who has transformed from military rule to a democratic order and remained committed to the democratic experiment. There are very few African leaders who could manage that change and who could stay true, who did not at some point have a change of mind. And President Rawlings must be saluted for that. President Rawlings must also be celebrated for the fight against corruption. I believe that it is now confirmed that he was indeed a selfless leader. And those who thought that he will end up as some of those other African military rulers with strange bank accounts, foreign accounts, and all of that. Nothing of that sort has been confirmed. Nothing of that sort has been found. He indeed is a very selfless leader, and nobody can question the love that he has for the ordinary man. Mr. Speaker, he will go down as somebody who did not, if there was wrongdoing in his government, even by people who may be related to him. We all know his history. He will take action. And it is not surprising, Mr. Speaker, that he earned that respect across the board as somebody who does not countenance, who does not tolerate wrongdoing, no matter where it is coming from. I have a personal story to share about his kindness, Mr. Speaker. I wish the Honorable Joycelyn Tete was here. Sometime in 2019, I think the Women's Caucus had a meeting with him, and he reached out to them, the Honorable Joycelyn Tete was the one tasked to carry the message, that he is looking for me and that he has heard of a particularly sad situation involving my cousin who is not doing well and at the time needed some medical assistance. My cousin was one of the people who sews for him, the designer, and he had just received a doctor from the States, a visitor who had a particular medication who he thought would be very helpful to help ameliorate the plight of my cousin. And he immediately sent for me, relaying the message to Honorable Joycelyn Tete and the other ladies who were in that meeting with him, and said I should see him urgently. I was wondering what the business was about, or what I may have done to warrant that urgent summons. So I must confess that I was quite concerned. But Mr. Speaker, when I arrived, he surprisingly knew about the plight of my cousin, the designer, and said there was this medication, and he made me talk to the doctor in his living room, and said I should reach out to him. But that is how kind the man is. Very, very, very kind to a fault, very generous, and he looks out for the ordinary Ghanaian. I do know of many humanitarian efforts that he's carried out. When I served at the Ministry of Education, the school fees of many students that he catered for, and he was always inundated. I do know that Focus Hospital, for example, I have some friends there, is always helping out their annual charity. Father Campbell would also tell you about the charity that he does, supporting Father Campbell's humanitarian efforts, especially with lepers and all of that. A very kind-hearted man, and we can spend the whole day, honestly, eulogizing President Rawlings. But certainly, this country is blessed to have had him. He came in at the right time. I agree with Professor Michael Quay when he wrote in his book that the emergence of Rawlings was timely, and it was great for the democracy of our country. And as a political science student, I remember reading that book, Politics in Ghana, and I really associate with the words of Professor Mike Okwe. Let us remember his good works, and let us live in his legacy, and let us know that at the end of the day, the final thing should be about improving the conditions of our people, fighting injustice, and making sure that we leave our country and our constituencies better than we met it. May his soul rest in perfect peace. Condolences to the Honorable Zaneto Rawlings and the children. Condolences to Nana Kunedu Ajima Rawlings. And condolences to the entire nation, to the entire continent. For he is an African icon who will forever be remembered. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, a special request that I grant 5 minutes to the minority chief whip to say a few words before the majority leader winds up. Yeah, so the leaders agreed, and I'll give him just 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the ladies are accusing us that we are not giving an opportunity for the ladies to say a word.
And it's not fair.
And all the contributors have been male, even though you cannot be blamed for it because you are sent a list. And I was wondering if magnanimous enough to allow at least if a lady to say something maybe before, even if it is for 2 minutes, so that I can also take 5 minutes and it will go to a majority leader. If you are minded. Leader.
I have granted you opportunity. I granted you the opportunity. So you make your comments. Was I consulted on the other side and wanted Honorable Dambuchi to also contribute, but he said because of the time, it was okay. So please, You may take 5 minutes to put out your.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me also contribute to the statement ably made by the minority leader and associate with all the comments that have been said without trying to repeat any of them. Mr. Speaker, I would want to make comment with regards to his belief for inclusiveness in the running of our country. And I want to believe that if I had missed this opportunity to say this, my conscience and the Zongo people in this country may not forgive me. The Speaker, when he became the head of state in 1981, 31st December, the Speaker, one of the major things that he did for my people, and when I talk about my people, those of us seen as Zongo people settling across the country, was to introduce Islamic Education Unit. And Mr. Speaker, this one single policy intervention in just about 5 years or 34 years has transformed our communities so greatly that today we can boast that we are participating actively in the development of our country. Mr. Speaker, before the introduction of the Islamic Education Unit, we had a major challenge, and one of our major challenges was that if you were to go to school and you were sent to a missionary school, you'll be forced to go to church. And because of that, our parents resolved not to take us to school. So, for example, in my family, my father's siblings, 41 of us, I'm number 14, and I'm the first to go to school. When the PNDC introduced Islamic Education Unit to take education to the makarantas that we had, so that secular education could be taught within our own environment, even in those dilapidated structures. Many of our younger siblings took advantage of it. And today, if you come to our community in this country that you cannot find within the Zongos across our country, the Speaker, what intervention that he did was to recognize that what intervention that Judge John Rawlings, as president, made was to recognize during Christmas and Easter, our brothers and sisters Christians will not have to be forced to go to work, and they had a holiday to celebrate their faith. He extended this to the Muslim community, ensuring that we had our Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha declared as public holidays, so that Muslims who are working could also take a rest on that day to observe their religious faith. Mr. Speaker, one other thing that he did, at every single national program, you have the pouring of the libation to recognize the African traditional religion. You have a Muslim prayer and you have a Christian prayer. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, today, we seem to have zeroed down to only the Muslims and the Christians, and gradually find a way of taking out the traditional believers out. I think as part of eulogizing him, we need to draw, our government need to be active, and remember that we have other groups other than us. All of us are taught, whether it's Islam, by the teachings of the Prophet, that you will never be a believer. That's the teaching of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, that you will never be a believer until you wish for others what you wish for yourself. And it is said in the Bible that Christ taught Christians that love thy neighbor as thyself. When you go to Confucius, Buddhist, he's also quoted having been said that sorry, I've just forgotten the Confucius quotation. But Mr. Speaker, the bottom line is that almost all the religions, the masters have taught their followers not to only love themselves and love only those who belong to their faith, but others too. But in practice, almost all of us to only narrow it to either ourselves or our life. And Jerry John Rawlings was one who stood out as one of the heads of state that fought for almost every smaller group in this country. It is not surprising that the Zongo community continued to love and live and support the party that he founded, the National Democratic Congress. And people are always surprised. Mr. Speaker, last but not the least, he helped the Muslim community to establish the National Chief Imam's Office as a rallying point for all issues that affect Muslims in this country. Mr. Speaker, before him, there was none. There was no such office. Even though our Christian brothers had the Catholic Bishops' Conference, the Christian Council that were used to rally their group, he encouraged the Muslims and he set up the National Chief Imam Office. Mr. Speaker, lessons that as people, we should not just be eulogizing him and saying the good things that he has done, but to act to strengthen some of the things that he believed and establish when he was the head of state, so that we continue to coexist even with our differences, so our country will continue to be greater than it is today. The Speaker, with these few comments, I want to conclude by thanking you sincerely for the opportunity to contribute to this statement. May his soul rest in perfect peace, and our condolences to our own colleague, Honorable Dr. Zinato Rawlings, and then the family with our mother, Nana Konedu, Her Excellency Nana Konedu Adjuma Rawlings. We are with you in this difficult moment, and we pray that you take consolation in the good things that he has done and emulate him and be able to continue to make our country greater. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Mr.
Speaker, I thank you very much for the opportunity first to associate myself with the tribute to the memory of His Excellency Flight Lieutenant John Rawlings, paid by minority leader in this House, and also say a few words of my own in respect of the transition of the pillar of the Fourth Republic. Speaker, His Excellency Flight Lieutenant John Rawlings has taken a bow out of this world stage. One can almost picture the man seated on a stool, surrounded by those who preceded him to the greater beyond, and he regaling them with tales of his illustrious life, fraught with trials and tribulations, and also telling them jokes. Speaker, the trial and tribulations from which he emerged largely triumphant. The rather unserenaded passing on of His Excellency Jerry John Rawlings struck Parliament and indeed the entire nation with, as this was never within our contemplation at the time. Undoubtedly, there can never be any successful account of the political history of this country, particularly the Fourth Republic, without recognizing the man, Jerry John Rawlings, what he stood for, his actions and inactions and all. Mr. Speaker, the varied and assorted experiences that characterize the very tumultuous journey towards the Fourth Republic still resonate in the same minds. The sheer determination against odds within and without the PNDC at the time. That was exhibited by His Excellency Flight Lieutenant Rawlings into a future that could not be predicted remains to be properly chronicled. Flight Lieutenant Rawlings emerged as the president from an election in 1992 that was perceived by his political opponents to have been flawed. But he persisted in his unwavering commitment to win the confidence of the citizenry over time. In pursuit of this path, his clarion call over the period was for the empowerment of the people and the integrity of leadership. Former President Rawlings never lost sight of the events of the past, which unfortunately tended to resurrect memories of some painful occurrences in what Justice Daniel Annan, the then de facto vice chairman of the PNDC, and the Speaker of the First and Second Parliament of the Fourth Republic as the blood and tender days of the PNDC era. The Speaker, Rawlings intended to close the nation in socialist gaps in 1982. In the difficult days that followed after December 31st, 1981, the bushfires, the deportation of close to 1 million Ghanaians from Nigeria, but he was very pragmatic and elected to do what eventually contributed significantly to stabilize the ship of state. Speaker, his charisma was endlessly felt by many, both national and international level. His ability to command crowd and lead people was indeed overwhelming, and his charm won him the admiration of both the young and the old. The Speaker, this eulogy to former President Rawlings can never be complete without stating unequivocally a strong conviction which propelled him in any endeavor he chose to pursue from the period of his emergence on the national scene. History would surely recognize his monumental contribution to the development of this country in the areas of education, agriculture, including the of the cocoa sector, devastated by drought and bushfires in 1982-83, in energy, especially the construction of thermal plants. And the Speaker, his particular efforts in rural electrification and access roads to rural areas, the efforts towards opening up the northern region for development also deserves mentioning. We would recall the various states of nations addresses on the floor of this House, replete with a number of fiscal measures, programs of action to mitigate the social cost of adjustment, PAMSCAD, phases 1 and 2, the Economic Recovery Program, phases 1, 2, and 3, Adjustment Program, SAP, phases 1, 2, and 3, the National Institutional Renewal Programs in all its phases. All these fiscal and economic measures, some of which undoubtedly were pushed down the throat of this nation at the time by the IMF and World Bank, with good intentions, though, were geared towards national reconstruction. His resolute firmness in superintending over the implementation of these programs, some of which were in clear conflict with the earlier stated position of the PNDC that Ghana did not have to go to the IMF or any of the Bretton Woods institutions. Indeed, the very first IMF-supported budget under Rawlings, which was shepherded by Dr. Kwesi Botwe, met stiff national resistance and led to the peeling off of some of the bitterest critics of the IMF World Bank from the PNDC at the time. The Speaker, the late President, was resolute in his then new conviction that the development of the nation could not happen without the support of IMF and World Bank. And when Dr. Botwe joined ranks with him and pushed that agenda, Mr. Speaker, the nation bounced back. And here we are today, emerging from the association, the partnership that this nation had with the Bretton Woods institutions. Mr. Speaker, the wisdom in the decision of Jerry John Rawlings at the time indeed salvaged the cause of this country. The late President never minced words in any situations or occurrence in relation to governance of this country, and even thereafter thus earning him the title Papa J and sometimes Papa Boom. Indeed, anyone who was privileged to be around him did well to be of good behavior, as any slip could trigger a very blunt criticism in the presence of all. The highest test of his political career was when he had to step aside after 8 years as president of the country in the year 2000 and hand over to the next president, His Excellency John Agyekum Kufuor. Indeed, Ghana has been very peaceful since he successfully handed over power as president. As a testament to his pace setting in the peaceful transfer of power, considering his background, it is not surprising that we have since had peaceful transfer of power, which other African countries also look up to emulate. Rawlings' patriotism was saying, even after his presidency, he invariably participated in all state functions, and the one we will miss most is his presence in the chamber of this parliament anytime he was invited. He never shied away from public activities, even when he was not in the best of shapes. He won several awards and was actively involved in many charity works all over the country and even beyond. The Speaker, there's no scintilla of doubt that former President Rawlings, out of inconspicuous and unpromising beginnings, certainly identified his and never betrayed it, and indeed fulfilled same. Needless to say, our sense of loss at his passing is poignant. The country would have wished to have had him with us for many more years, but we are indeed grateful to the Almighty God for enabling us share in his very impactful life. To his widow and partner in governance, Nana Kunadu Agyemang Rawlings, his nuclear family, including our own colleague, Dr. Zinato Rawlings, the extended family, the party he controlled from 1992 to 2000, and indeed the entire nation, we express our profound condolences. May the good Lord hold us together. The Speaker, Flight Lieutenant Rawlings has played his part in national reconstruction. Without doubt, he was not a perfect person. But who amongst us is perfect? My prayer is that history will be kind to Flight Lieutenant John Rawlings for the role that he played in our national development. May his soul and the souls of all faithful departed rest in the bosom of our Lord till we meet again. Mr. Speaker, I thank you very much for the space granted.
Honorable members, let me just endorse all what have been said. In trying to eulogize our departed President Jerry John Rawlings. I'll begin by echoing these words. So praise we great and famous men, the fathers named in glory, and praise the Lord, who now and then reveals in man his glory, unquote. President Rawlings definitely was a creation of the society he lived in, an embodiment of his time. Unity in diversity. Rawlings definitely lived towards uniting people, uniting our goals. He worked towards stabilizing the country, and his focus was for nothing but the development of Ghana. At the peril of his life and that of his dear wife and children, he sacrificed everything for Ghana. And so one could say that he lived, worked, and died for Ghana. Many of you are not aware that before Rawlings, constituents rather went to their members of parliament. It is Rawlings that introduced the politics of members of parliament touring and visiting their constituents. The culture of politics we are practicing today is one of his legacies. It's not only the Fourth Republic, it's not only the values that he has so ably inscribed in the body politics of Ghana. The values of justice, equity, probity, and accountability, and open and transparent governance. I can say President Rawlings is a kind that is rare in the world. And those of us who have been around the world are aware that Rawlings is more loved and adored outside Ghana than in Ghana. It was not for nothing that the world has been voting for him. And we are really proud that we benefited from the fountain of his wisdom and vision. In fact, if we had followed through his vision of Vision 2020, Ghana would have been a better place than we are today. In my mind, and I know the minds of many, President Rawlings created an image of a person larger than life. And that is what led to the shock that we all received when we heard of his sudden departure. But this confirmed the statement that we are all bears of passage. And I hope that we are learning the lessons, some of the lessons that you have echoed today. I want to see that in practice. I want to see that as living testimonies as we lead our constituents in our daily duties to develop Ghana. With this, I want to call on all of you for us to give him a minute silence. A minute silence, please. May his soul and the souls of all the faithfully departed rest in peace. Amen. Honorable members, I'm sure you all have copies of the order paper addendum. We are moving to commencement of public business. Item 6, the order paper addendum replaces what is on the original order paper, the private member's motion. I want to be guided by leadership and the mover of the motion whether we could go on with it, and if so, how many to contribute and what time limit we should give to members to do so. Yes, Majority Leader.
Speaker, we've had some consultations amongst us in leadership, and given the solemnity of the occasion that we just involved ourselves in paying glowing tribute to our former president, we concluded that it would be wise to stand the motion down and come Tuesday to deal first thing with it after we commence business. So that's an indication that our colleagues on the other side, and I believe we can abide by that.
Yes, Minority Leader.
Speaker, that is the understanding we are reaching, and I've consulted the Honorable Muhammad Ayerga that we consider the motion on Tuesday as one of the very first and probably major business for Tuesday. Mr. Speaker, what is refreshing is that you see, as you yourself have admitted, that there is now some understanding on the text of the motion, and therefore we should be able to take it on Tuesday. And on our side, I've said that we should be bringing even the debate to conclusion the Honorable Suino Alasan, Honorable Ablakwa, and myself will be the only contributors. Then we can get the same tray from the other side, and you can put the question on speaker. So I hope I have your understanding. I engage the Honorable Ayaga that, given as leader have said, we should dedicate today to the memory of President Rawlings. And Mr. Speaker, I enjoyed even your concluding words. I just pray that as a country, we will take some other decisions to preserve, honor, and dignify the office of former president as a people and as a country, as part of the recommendations you made. We have to take a decision as part of our commitment to deepen our democracy, that office is never ever personalized, and that we honor and dignify the office of the former president. Thank you.
Yes, honorable members, we've gone far with this motion. Consultations have provided some useful guidance as to how we should go about it. And I think we've made some great progress. And so on Tuesday, it will be the icing on the cake. We're looking at the figures. We are not talking about suspending. We are talking about government absorbing it. And so let's have the opportunity to do it. I agree with leadership that we should take it on Tuesday. And the numbers definitely are guided by them again, those who are to contribute. But there's a lot of work to be done next week. But because of the COVID, I think we are going to take some measures. We are going to take some measures. We will be needing about 1/3 of members on the floor. The rest will have to do virtual parliament. You have to be in your offices, observe proceedings, as and when necessary, appear to contribute. But we're not going to allow this kind of sitting again. We are also making, if possible, from next week to make use of the new tent that is provided down there where we used to swear in His Excellency the President. Whilst we give this place for fumigation and thorough scrutiny, and also the installation of other gadgets that could make the environment better for the work of Parliament, at least make it more difficult for the virus to survive or be transmitted to another person. And so during the course of the weekend, there will be a lot of work, not only on the floor of the House, but also the precincts of Parliament, including your offices. And so please, honor with the parliamentary service to get this thing done. Also to remind you of our other assignment on Tuesday, the filing pass. We are expected to be here by 8:30 so that we can move together. Our time slot is between 9 and 10, 1 hour for members of parliament. And so members should try to be here by 8:30 so that we can move together to go and give our late president a befitting funeral. Apart from that, we will expect that those who opt or who leadership will direct to be in their offices should at least come to be recognized as having attended the parliamentary sitting. And then we will also be checking to see actually whether you are in your offices or you are somewhere else. You must attend sitting. By this time, they say restricted to the floor of the chamber, but also in your offices. COVID, once again, is real. COVID is deadly and is ravaging the whole world. So honorable members should take it very, very serious. With this, I'm tempted to adjourn the House. The House is accordingly adjourned till Tuesday, 26th January 2021 at 8:30 in the forenoon so that we can move together to perform the other responsibilities. The House is adjourned.